the importance of collaboration now more than ever. Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the Fundraising School, and I'm joined today by Soren Kaplan. Soren is a nationally regarded educator and consultant on organizational effectiveness, including in the nonprofit sector. He's worked with community-based grassroots organizations and national nonprofits and philanthropic organizations of all sizes in between. And one of the topics he teaches on is the importance of nonprofit collaboration. Soren, what a delight to have you with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
It's a real pleasure to be here, Bill. Thanks for including me.
And the interview is based on an article that Soren published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review back in 2025. And Soren, I guess the first question is, why collaborate? I'm a fundraiser at a nonprofit. Why me doing my job for just my nonprofit? Why is that not enough? What is the importance here of collaboration?
Impact and results. So most nonprofits have missions, and they can be big, bold missions. But at the same time, the world's gotten complex and complicated, and everything's connected. So if you want to have an impact on health equity or the environment or food insecurity, you can do so individually, but you can have even greater impact when you're partnering and collaborating with others. And so really collaboration is the name of the game for profit as well as nonprofit.
You know, Soren, the analogy that I like to make is I can have one donor, I can have a couple of donors, but wow, when I have a multitude of donors and a diverse range of resources, then I can take on these big social challenges in my community or anywhere around the world. Sounds like the same is true for collaboration. I can have one nonprofit, but when a lot of nonprofits are working together, it seems like we can have an exponentially better impact.
I've got several examples for you. The one is from my article, but I just finished doing the strategy for an organization called Points of Light, which was founded by George H.W. Bush. And Points of Light has served, I think, in last year, over 3 million volunteers because they've created a network of nonprofits. And so they work with corporate philanthropy and others, and they coalesce and organize these incredible volunteer initiatives. And they have hundreds of nonprofits all working together to have impact together based on specific goals and measures that they're trying to achieve through their corporate partners and others. So, you know, they've really, I think, been a trailblazer in collaboration. But, you know, they're organizing networks of nonprofits, but nonprofits can also collaborate with other nonprofits themselves to have greater impact as well.
And in that wonderful Points of Light example, there's a common goal to encourage people to volunteer, to support the volunteers. And when you describe the key aspects of collaboration, you talked about all the partners having a common goal, which they can learn about from sharing their data and then identifying a specific community need that they can all work on together. Can you expand upon those principles, please?
Yeah, the article that I think you discovered and why I'm here is from the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And it highlights a nonprofit I started working with some time ago called White Pony Express. They're focused on food security and basically essentially collecting the food that would otherwise be disposed of and then distributing it before it goes bad. It's an incredible nonprofit. But what they realized is that in even affluent Contra Costa County, which is in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, they realized that they had limited visibility. You know, they deliver to food pantries and other nonprofits to then distribute the food, but they had limited visibility on the impact they were having on real, you know, kind of feet on the ground, the people that they were ultimately serving. And so what they also realized is that there were other nonprofits in the region who were also dealing with food insecurity, but they weren't really seeing each other's work or understanding the impact that each other was having. And so they got together. They realized that if they pooled resources, just in terms of starting point, their data. So they looked at, you know, some people were collecting food from Whole Foods and others before it got tossed out. Others were actually running food pantries. Others were serving meals. They pooled their data, they standardized it, and they created a heat map to show where their collective impact was. And that just blew the doors open in terms of what they saw as the possibilities for how they could then start working together.
Common goal, eliminating food insecurity, sharing the data to see who is doing what and where are the strengths and where are the gaps with a heat map, which is a wonderful illustration, and then showing the community need of where those gaps are to provide that service. And I know you encourage strongly that there be an external facilitator, that, you know, these different nonprofits are coming together. That, of course, is the expertise that you bring to the table. It's not too dissimilar, for example, when we do a fundraising campaign, we encourage people to bring an outside facilitator. Why is that such an important factor when nonprofits collaborate?
Well, you know, every nonprofit has a board. Those boards have their own priorities and objectives. They also have their own funding models. They have their own missions. Now, there can be overlap between those things, but typically nonprofits are funded separately. And so a lot of times, just by the nature of how nonprofits are organized, they're competing with each other implicitly sometimes, you know, for funding. But what the opportunity is to have an external objective kind of facilitator, I guess you could say, to help people see commonality, help people recognize the synergies that exist, and then rise beyond them and realize that 1 + 1 can equal 5, or 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 10 in terms of collaboration. And so the practical example here would be the 5 organizations in Contra Costa County. And I want to recognize them because the work that they're doing are really incredible. So it's the Food Bank of Contra Costa County and Solano, White Pony Express, Meals on Wheels, Diablo Region, Loaves and Fishes of Contra Costa, and St. Vincent de Paul of Contra Costa County. These are, you know, known, reputable brands essentially in the nonprofit world. What they did is they came together and they realized if they were to pool resources, but also go after funding opportunities collectively, that they could have even a greater impact on getting funding, but also the impact when they use it. And a new measure in the county that these organizations are in, called Measure X, came about, and it was a 0.5-cent sales tax to support underserved groups and community members. And they went after this Measure X funding, and they got it. And they realized that by pooling their collective resource and thinking and strategy, they could actually get funding that might be unobtainable to any individual organization. And now they're running with it and having even greater impact.
So we see the impact in reducing, hopefully eliminating food insecurity. We see an impact on public policy, all made possible at a deeper, higher level because of the collaboration. And, you know, Soren, I'm sure in our audience, some people are asking, who goes first? How do we take this first step? Especially when there can be those concerns about, wait, I need to share my data. I'm surely not sharing with you my donor list. How do we get started and go down this pathway?
Well, who goes first is someone just steps up and goes first. And if you recognize the importance of collaboration, it's not rocket science. That article you mentioned, it's called the Impact Collaborative Model. You just search on Impact Collaborative Model, Stanford Social Innovation Review, you'll get it. There's a step-by-step approach. So, really it's about identifying those with a similar mission, purpose, that you think there's a possibility to team up with in some way to explore ways in which you can collaborate. And so create a dialogue, reach out, and just say, we're interested in exploring what the possibilities are. And you can use that article that you referenced as there's a step-by-step approach that anyone can use to kick things off. And it's really about conversation, exploration, and then ideation around what the possibilities are, and then figuring out how do you kind of bring those to life through looking at shared data, looking at shared mission, shared revenue generation opportunities through philanthropy, or even otherwise.
And the challenges that we're willing to take on are large. Therefore, we should be willing to take our time. The collaboration is not going to happen in that first meeting. And to continue to have more meetings, build that trust over time, and follow these principles that are being taught to us here by Soren Kaplan. Soren, let me ask you then, people wonder about how does this hold together? And you have this phrase called light governance. What does light governance look like now that we've taken the initial steps, we've followed these principles, we're doing our work? Who's in charge? How does that work?
Light collaboration really is about looking at what each organization is already doing. So every organization has their own strategy and their mission, and we want to keep that so that the organizations are still doing what they're doing. Their boards are giving them measures and success factors that they need to go after. That's all good. Light collaboration means we are still autonomous, yet we are working together to make sure if we're going to change our strategies or go after big initiatives, that we do so while checking the alignment with this broader impact collaborative approach. So we want to make sure if we have a heat map, that if we have an initiative, it's going to enhance the overall results that we're trying to create in partnership with our collaborators. So it's additive and not individualistic in terms of just going off and doing our own thing. We keep alignment to this broader overall mission and goals that we have as a collaborative.
The collaboration then governed, as Soren has just said, by that common goal and what we've learned through the shared data. As we focus on that particular community need, it really helps govern the work of the collaborative. And, Soren, then that leads us to one of the most important questions. And of course, we're at the fundraising school, and that's how does this affect fundraising? And you've actually seen collaborations lead to an increase in fundraise revenues because of that exponential growth and impact that can happen. Please help us understand how this can actually help the nonprofits and the collaboration with their fundraising.
Yeah, well, when you look at the complex problems and challenges out there, things are only getting more complex and more challenging. And so it's one thing to go after fundraising and say, my organization can help address this need or address this problem. It's another, those who are providing funding want to see innovation. They want to see higher levels of impact, breakthroughs and disruptions in how models are currently executed. And so the idea here is that a collaboration model allows multiple organizations to pull together their assets, their capabilities, their strategies, so that they can then communicate out to the world, those who are funding them or could fund them. We're going to have even greater impact than any one organization going after the same funding. So essentially, you're competing as a collaborative for shared resources that might go to others, but because you're making a better business case, you're making a better case for impact, you can then get the funding that allows you to scale and have that greater impact than any individual organization could have alone.
And since fundraisers are others focused, let's put ourselves in the seat of that individual donor. They have 4 appeal letters from nonprofits tackling food insecurity. Think about the foundation program officer has 5 grant proposals, different nonprofits all trying to reduce and eliminate food insecurity. Or does that donor hear from one powerful collaborative? Is that grant proposal from that one powerful collaborative? And we have some efficiencies of scale, and the dollars can go farther, and the mission accomplishment can go even deeper. And when that happens, I know you are a big fan of making sure we celebrate and tell that story. It's too easy to just move on, right? To continue tackling the problem. Why is that so important?
Well, it's important because culture is important in terms of a culture of innovation, a culture of appreciation, culture of service. And so there will always be plenty of problems to focus on. When we have wins, even small wins, if we celebrate those wins collectively and even in our own individual organization, we're communicating things at a cultural level. What do we care about? What do we value? What's important to the world and to those who we're working with and that we're serving? And so by celebrating wins, you're creating culture organizationally, and you're energizing those who are working with you as staff or volunteers so that you get more of what you're looking for, which is great service and high impact. So celebrating wins is about creating culture and elevating impact in the long term.
And of course, donors love a good story. And so if we have one to celebrate, that can certainly help us with our work. Soren Kaplan, national consultant, educator, author, helping organizations, including in the nonprofit sector, be more efficient and more effective. Soren, thanks so much for being with us on the Fundraising School's First Day podcast.
A pleasure, Bill. Thank you.
And collaboration comes up quite a bit as we teach our 27 public courses in more than 10 U.S. cities. And of course, those courses can lead to 5 different certificates. We can also customize training specifically for your nonprofit, or speaking of collaboration, for your association, maybe for all the nonprofits in your county, geographic region. That is available for you through our custom training projects. We also can have our quarterly webinars come to you 4 times a year. We have this weekly podcast that comes out at the beginning of every week. And of course, all of our knowledge gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, the book now out in its 5th edition. Where do you find this? Online, one simple place, go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. So grateful for our producers, Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.